welcome to the Your Parenting Mojo podcast. Today we have two special guests. Here with us is Hannah and Kelty from the Upbringing podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
So I wonder if you could start by introducing yourselves, please, because there are two of you and you look similar except for the hair. Your voices are similar for those of you who are listening on the podcast. Please go ahead and tell us who you are and about the Upbringing show as well.
Yeah, we usually introduce ourselves as twins, moms, works in progress, feminists, tired people, and parenting coaches who are basically working to empower parents and empower one another to grow up alongside our kids for what we call sanity and social change. That's our primary goal. So we do that through our podcast, which has been going for a little over a year, and through one-on-one coaching, and then through our Instagram community where we do live Q&As and videos and have just a wonderful community of folks that we're growing up alongside. What about our trainings and background, just so people can know about us?
We're trained in simplicity, parenting, and positive discipline, and RIE foundations training.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Then we are currently parenting in captivity on a farm that we share with our partners. And then between the two of us, we have 4 kids, ages 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so that is another one of our biggest teachers, obviously, is our brood of children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And you sound similar for those who are only listening. For those who are watching on YouTube, who's Hannah and who's Kelty?
Redhead Hannah.
Redhead Hannah.
The hair. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We're clear on that.
His color is.
I'll answer to anything.
It's like an
flexible.
interesting pandemic ombre situation now.
And we should give a hat tip to our mutual listener as well, Dana, right? She connected us. She reached out and said, hey, do you want to be connected? And I hadn't heard of your show before, and I looked at your website and I said, yes, I want to be connected.
And then meanwhile, we've been fans of yours for years and never thought we would end up getting to actually talk to you on your podcast. We're so lucky.
Yeah.
It's like we're pinching ourselves. I might wake up any moment.
Well, thank you very much. That's very kind. So you described yourselves as feminists, which can be a difficult word. About 20% of my audience is male. And so I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about whether you've always been feminists, or is this something that is a more recent development?
I think that we call ourselves feminists because it is in some ways a buzzword. Feminism is kind of a lifestyle brand these days, and a lot more people are kind of moving their mindset and their thoughts about what feminism is, from the bra burning type,
man-hating,
that type of situation, to the okay, everyone is a feminist who believes in women's rights. And I think that to expand on that, I mean, we're more like humanists, if that's a thing. I think that we would identify as humanists because it all is about equal rights for everybody, not just women. So that's kind of how we identify, I would say. But I wouldn't say we'd always identified as feminists. Would you, Kelly?
No, I think the way we've explored it is that our kids have kind of made us feminists. Having kids who at a certain point, maybe in early toddlerhood, began resisting us at every turn, kind of made us look at our resistance and the things that we were passionate about, and our outreach in our communities and what we really cared about. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that kids are born feminists in that way. They are fiercely able to advocate. They're unapologetically advocating for themselves all the time. They have what we call really strong inner wisdom and inner authority to see to their needs. And I think that that's something that we are kind of kindling in our mid-30s. I never remember how old we are, so I just say mid-30s. Okay. And that raising them in this way and thinking about the ways we're raising them to be and stay connected to that inner wisdom and authority, that human spirit, has allowed us to reconnect to our own human spirit, our own feminism, our own humanity in that greater sense of the word.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think it really speaks back to the patriarchy episode that I recorded with Dr. Carol Gilligan and one of my listeners who's a male, and working on feminism and dismantling patriarchy. And yeah, there's we set these arbitrary boundaries around this is a male quality and it's valued, and this is a female quality and it's not valued. And intuition and knowing ourselves and knowing our bodies really falls on that feminine side, doesn't it? But there's so much value for all of us to understand these things, and our children know that. And it's through interacting with us and our culture that they forget it. They learn that it should be tamped down, and and if we can actually listen to them for a change, then we can actually learn something.
Absolutely. And I think too that talk about intersectionality within feminism, that feminism isn't just for white women. Feminism is about everybody. It's for everyone. And I think that the intersection that Kelty and I like to talk around feminism is parenting. That parenting absolutely intersects with feminism in how we're raising our kids, how we're attuning and supporting and disciplining their body, their feelings, and their voices. Those are feminist issues. Those are human rights issues. Those are social justice issues. And they happen in our homes multiple times a day.
Okay, so let's talk about that then. Let's talk about some super practical examples, maybe, of ways that you see these things intersecting. I mean, we're talking about feminism and intersectionality and all these big concepts, but how does this play out in your homes?
Well, I remember going to, gosh, what was it? It was a fundraiser of some sort downtown in Portland where we live. And, we were talking about how we got to resist. It was probably during Me Too, the Me Too movement. And we were talking about consent, and we were raising money for a foundation. And then I remember coming home, and she must have been 4-year-old daughter at the time, just did not want to get in the bathtub. And I just remember saying, get in the bathtub. And I was thinking of like, what? Or else, or because I said so, or whatever. And it occurred to me in that moment, like I was just at this event where we were saying, resist the system, resist control, resist people feeling like they have the ability to control our bodies as women or for anybody's. And then I go home and I tell my kid, don't resist me. And I think in that moment, in some ways I realized, and then Kelty was having these similar experiences at home with her highly spirited, highly sensitive kids. So even probably more experiences that I was having, that we were the authority, we're the parents. Therefore, we were in some ways the system. We were the institution.
The man.
We were the man. Oh my gosh. And I think in that moment, I had always thought I was the feminist, and everything everything I was doing outside the home, I was doing the same inside the home. And I didn't realize that my role was completely the opposite, that I was the authority, the potential oppressor in my home with my kid that I love so much. And I think that was a point where we realized, oh my gosh, we have got a bit of a unconscious hypocrisy on our hands, and we are not the only ones. And so I think that's what kind of started this.
I think that's why we started, we're like, we're going to organize, we're Virgos, we're like, we just have to figure out where are all of the places that this unconscious hypocrisy might be unfolding. Okay. And we look to our kids' resistance. Where are we seeing their resistance the most? Okay. Around their body stuff. So getting in the tub, diaper changes, brushing teeth, like trimming hair, brushing those knots out of the hair, around their eating and their food, how many bites they need of this, how much water they need, and still around their body, what they should wear and when. Got to bring that coat, got to put that on, all of these places around their body. And then their feelings, right? Their big, splashy, messy feelings. There's so much resistance associated with those. And we had to sort of start analyzing, how do we come into this? How are we showing up in this? Is this feeling aligned with who we are and what we expect for ourselves and other people? What else?
And their
voices. Voices were maybe like the first signal of resistance, because that's where it would come out and saying no. Over and over, absolutely not like that. Why? Explain to me this, right? So those are our children's resistance became these incredibly valuable clues to us of where we might be overstepping, maybe over controlling, maybe not giving enough agency or autonomy or information or connection or support and scaffolding. And so that's how our freedoms model came about. We have these 10 realms that just helped bring sort of awareness and consciousness to our interactions with our kids in these areas of their lives that start very much ours when they're little babies, but change in that dynamic as they get older, and thinking about the way that we show up, how we can sensitively support instead of maybe getting in there with our very, very natural, well-intentioned efforts to build them, to help them along, to just get stuff done.
That's the practice, right?
Yeah. It's so easy. Just pay attention to all those things. Pay attention, you'll be fine. So it's the practice for sure.
Okay, so I want to get into the practice. But before we do that, I'm thinking, okay, so many of these things I can see that, yeah, if we could just let them go, our lives would be so much easier. You know, the whole, it's cold outside, you need to wear a jacket kind of thing. Why not just let the child figure out if they want a jacket, and maybe bring the jacket, and when they get cold, they can put it on. Or when they get a bit older, then they become responsible for that decision making. And if they don't want a jacket and don't want to take the jacket, then that's a decision they're going to live with. What about something like toothbrushing, where it's, you know, the teeth aren't going to fall out if we skip toothbrushing tonight, and maybe even tomorrow as well. But at the end of the day, we kind of do need to get the teeth brushed. So how is that kind of situation different to you from the, yeah, okay, I'm on board with not forcing my child to eat more than they want to eat. I'm okay with them not taking a jacket if they say they're not cold.
I think that each one of us has our sticking point on a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the big thing we need to be doing and that we're trying to practice is asking ourselves why. So I remember calling my mom and being like, I've just gone 10 rounds with my toddler about the coat because it's cold and their head's wet. Will they get sick? Why am I doing this? Mom, please. And she was like, no, I don't think so. What do you think? And I was like, well, you used to do it for me. So, so I think asking ourselves why. So one person might say, well, toothbrushing every few days, I'm comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
And another person might say it has to happen every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that checking in with ourselves about, like, does that have to happen? Does the coat have to come? Am I comfortable carrying it? Will they get an infection if they don't get in the tub? And trying to seek those answers.
Well, and questioning, I love that, Kel, questioning that voice inside our heads that's telling us to do something or why something must be done in a certain way with another person who should really have a say in how it's done or why it's done. What we call a conversation should be happening. But I think that's part of it, is saying, with this unconscious hypocrisy, with this growing awareness we've been having and that we talk about so much in our work now, we're saying, wow, who is that voice in our heads? Who is that? That's our culture. That's our greater culture. That's the external gaze and external voice that we've all been raised to focus on and prioritize. And then we come into this parenting sphere and we're struggling a lot with all of this resistance, this toothbrushing resistance, for example. And we feel like it has to happen for exactly 2 minutes, morning, in the evening, flossing, but 80% of the time, let's say. And like, oh my gosh, I'm coming up with this expectation, this voice in my head with this expectation. And then in front of me is this little person who's saying, no, how do I get that done? And I think part of that inner voice is also saying, they don't need to be part of the conversation. Our culture says we're the parents, we're the authority, we're the power, we're at the top of the hierarchy here. So the way we want to do it, the expectation we have, whatever our brain is telling us, our reality, what we call it, it goes, right? And so I think that's a huge part of, for example, in a toothbrushing situation or struggle, saying, wow, this isn't just me setting this out. I'm not the only actor on stage creating this reality. My kid is also here too. What can they play in? How can this be? We're two humans here together. I have a lot more privilege, right? I've got more power, but I will ultimately want them to know how to use their privilege and power someday. So I got to get real with my own and bring them in on this conversation earlier. Do you want to play out what that would look like with toothbrushing?
Yeah, go for it.
Kelty,
this is so awesome. You could do a role play. We can just do this.
We should use Hannah's kids because mine are spirited and sensitive, and we don't brush our teeth every night, right? And I think, just really quick, the way that we go into a lot of these kind of resistance moments where we're like, but at the end of the day, and we have one of those feelings, is trying to balance out the skill building versus the value building, right? And trying to figure out which one ultimately is more important, and our approach is going to be reflected in that. And so for me, when I'm getting a lot of resistance around toothbrushing with my children, the value is more important to me. So the value of clean teeth and good hygiene becomes elevated in that dynamic, because the skill is not going to happen without me holding them down or forcing them, or
Well, and if you force the skill, then it undermines the value.
right,
Is
exactly
what you're
right,
saying.
and creating a positive association around whatever it is, and conversations around it, and all those things becomes a priority for me, right? But maybe just go with a little bit more
Role
of
play.
Role play. That's why there are two of us. We've been our little twintroverts for a long time here, so you might have to pull us out of it. But I think that's where we use what we call our resist approach. We've figured out, okay, we don't want to use control, like blind control with our kids. That teaches them to use blind control when they're an authority and power, right? We want to be using nonviolent communication. We want to be practicing what we call powers beyond control with our kids, because kids don't just learn from us, oh, toothbrushing is really important. They're learning, wow, how does mom use power to show me that toothbrushing is really important? And that's the thing that's invisible about parenting that we oftentimes forget, is that it's not just what our intention is, that we want our kids to brush their teeth for 2 minutes every night. But if we go about it using incentives and consequences and shame and isolation and all these very normal conventional parenting practices, then that's actually what they're learning how to do, with a little bit of the toothbrushing stuff. If they even can absorb that, because all of this discipline usually just blows out any of the actual learning that could be taking place. So the resist approach, anyway, is what we kind of established, which stands for, well, we're in it, we're resisting conventional discipline when our kids are resisting us. So that's why we call it the resist approach. And it stands for respect, empathize, sync up, innovate, summarize, and trust. And so and it's not like 2 minutes for each step. This is not a one size fits all thing. It's a very fluid, open process of just engaging in a conversation with our kids. So for example, around toothbrushing, I would respect.
Wait, let's talk about the
Oh,
struggle
what?
first.
Oh, go ahead. So one of my kids is like ignoring me when I say, let's, hop like bunnies into the bathroom, or how are your teeth feeling? Maybe let's go head in there. So we'll read these couple books after we get those teeth brushed, whatever it is, trying to segue
Or even
them
just
in
like,
there.
it's time.
Yeah.
We're brushing teeth.
Like, it's been 4 days. We're heading in there now. And they're just like, nah, yeah, no, not tonight. Or no, the book. I'm going to get inside in the book. And so then what happened through the resist?
Well, I think the respect step, which is it helps prime our brains for this interaction being a conversation, where it's not a domination, it's a conversation. So we're going to be using connection instead of control. We're going to be conversing instead of correcting, and thinking of our kids as their own human self with their own personal reality, with their own developmental skills and their lack of developmental skills that they have yet to build. Right. And so remembering that we don't, that cracking down can sometimes get results, but that it's ultimately not supporting their learning. It's not supporting our relationship, et cetera.
I think it's funny that we focus on the lack of developmental skills. So we get mad about it and worked up, instead of the lack of developmental skills being like a mitigating circumstance
and something we can actually lean in and support. And then I move into E, which is empathize. And I would just connect with my kid not wanting to brush their teeth. I think so much of resistance is saying, I'm asserting my personal authority. I have wisdom about myself. This is fierce and awesome. I'm 4 years old. Hear me roar. And, and our kids want to feel secure in that strong sense of self. We want to support that. And we also, if they're feeling a little uncomfortable or struggling a little bit for whatever reason to feel motivated to brush their teeth, we want them to feel like their ally. We want to show them that their feelings are totally normal, right? So that they don't grow up when they have inner resistance to something, we want them to be kind to themselves. We want them to know how to calm themselves down. That's what we're modeling through an interaction like this. So we would be like, oh my gosh, you don't want to brush your teeth. What's up with that? Tell me more.
It'd be like, toothbrushing is stupid.
Yeah.
I already did it.
You already did it. Okay. And just listen about that a little and help them feel like we're here collaboratively. We seek to understand them, all that stuff. And then we move into sync up and be like, okay, so you're not wanting to brush your teeth, and this is kind of tricky. How's it been going with your teeth? Can I tell you something about what we're eating for dinner? Can I tell you something about the dentist? Not trying to scare or threaten.
I was noticing it's been a few days. How many days has it been?
Right. We're bringing them in on our information. So we're getting on the level with all the information. And then we innovate. We move on to innovate. And we start thinking of things, how can we support our kids now when they don't want to brush their teeth? So when they don't want to finish a college essay, they can rely on those same innovation strategies. When they are really struggling to finish their taxes or something else that they don't necessarily love to do someday, they don't avoid it. They curiously, lovingly check out that curiously, that resistance, and say, how am I going to work my way through this? What's going to help me? We're helping them attune to their inner needs so that they can move forward. So what would be a few quick ideas?
Yeah, I mean, we would offer like, well, I was thinking I would look in there with the toothbrush and see if there are any dinosaurs. Or how about I brush with you and we'll both try to stand on one foot at the same time.
Have you ever brushed upside down? Like, would you want to try that tonight?
Can we put on this favorite song that's yours? Or let's pick out one extra book. We could do one more book and I'll start reading it while you brush your teeth. And I think this is the moment where a lot of parents are like, why do I have to bend over backwards to do this thing for my kid? When I say it, they should just do it. They should know. And then we remember that they're 2 or 5 or 8 and it's at the end of a long day and toothbrushing isn't fun. We struggle with it too sometimes, right?
Absolutely.
But it actually lightens the mood. By the time I get rung through all the feelings to the innovation step, innovating actually helps me too. It helps me connect. It helps me keep things light.
Yeah, using the humor and creativity, which we want to be, that's a skill that we're actually modeling and teaching. It's not just the be all end all, did their teeth get brushed or not? Remember that maybe they'll be into next time. Maybe they'll use in a different way. And then we summarize, right? And this is an area where we decide how we want to go about it. So
if they're still resisting,
or say, I'm going to scoop you up and help you into the bathroom. And maybe we can talk about it there.
It's often where a boundary is set, but yeah, it's ours to decide if we want to set a limit or a boundary in this situation.
And I tend to set the limit or boundary with my kids where we won't have time for stories if we can't get our teeth brushed right now. And I say it in the most loving way because we want to create a positive association with this whole conversation so that they want to engage in it with us for another 5 years. Possibly. And then Kelty will sometimes say, well, what's our plan then? Let's summarize what the plan is for tomorrow. We need to talk about this.
We put a little like tooth drawing on the calendar for tomorrow and we'll do it then.
Right.
And then that night is a story about me going to the dentist where I got drilled. I'm just kidding. But no, work it into my storytelling a little bit. Right. And so the conversation's not over and not in a, they're going to get grilled or going to hear about it again, but that we're going to keep talking about it. And that's sort of what segues into the trust step, which is that we're playing the long game. All of this skill building takes time and it's value building too. And that's why if my kids are still resisting by summarize, I usually don't enforce a boundary. I usually let it go with the trust and with the experience that they're going to get there on their own when they're ready. Right.
Well, and that fine middle way where we just went through a conversation with our kids where we didn't go to either extreme that we technically and typically go through, where we either crack down with control with a consequence or moving them into the bathroom and brushing their teeth for them. Right. Or we didn't let it go. So we
weren't blow it off from the beginning.
Right. We weren't over controlling and we weren't letting them control, which can be really destabilizing for a kid to always be in charge of everything. And we said, well, I'm the person in charge, but I'm not in control of your body. So let's have a conversation about this. And it has to be multiple conversations. That's the practice, is this doesn't just get fixed in one day. There's no quick solution. It's scaffolding, slow growth type stuff.
Yeah.
We've been talking a long time.
Yeah, I've mentioned on the show before, I think, or at least in a blog post or somewhere, that my daughter Karis and I have a catchphrase between the two of us, and we say, let's talk about this later. And it's not a let's talk about this later, young lady. It's a phrase that has come to mean we're going to come back to this when we're fresh and when we've had a break, and we're each going to bring ideas about how this can work differently next time. And so that's kind of our signal that we're going to have some thinking in the in-between time. And then when we come back to it, we know we're bringing it with this fresh perspective where we're looking to understand, what are the feelings going on here? What are the underlying needs? Why don't you want to brush your teeth? And then the solutions become apparent.
Yeah, and sometimes the resist approach doesn't happen in that actual moment. It happens talking about it later.
Well, but I think in conventional parenting, we are taught that like everything must happen in the moment. Otherwise, we will forget about it, or we failed, or we'll be like, that was so traumatic. I don't want to talk about it again until 24 hours from now. When
12 hours from now.
Right. And so I think that
yeah, that's brilliant. We call it the circle back, where, and not, like you said, the grill back that most of us grew up with, where a lot of magic can get done outside the moment, for sure.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really wanted to draw out in your work that made me want to connect with you was the idea that these conversations are happening in our house, but these are the conversations that also shift society. Right. Can you talk a little bit about that and about how you see parenting as being this engine for social change?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's been an evolution for us personally, but little by little, day by day, we're starting to realize, oh my gosh, parenting is so political. It's not just personal. And I think that that's what the system, not to sound like total,
Conspiracy
theorist wants us to think, that we're all individuals, little families, nuclear families in our own homes, living joyfully, suffering alone with our families with this discipline situation, and not feeling like there is a collective feeling of not just support, but of purpose behind what we're doing. And I think we started our early parenthood being like, okay, I'm parenting for sanity. I need to get through this day. Like we've all been through that with young children and babies. And then we got to the point where we were like, well, okay.
This is when we kind of came onto your podcast.
Right. We were like, okay, I'm getting my footing. Okay, I'm a little more sane now. I can get through the day. But now I also want to really support these things in my kids. It's going to help like create an individual and support an individual who's happy, who's successful, who's respectful, who's empathic, who's, self-motivated, who's resilient. So we started thinking, okay, now my parenting practice isn't just around surviving and being sane. It's now through supporting our kids' success, supporting them. And then little bit by little, and basically once our kids became toddlers and we started realizing that our discipline was being controlled by these cultural influences that did not align with who we were as people and as women, and as parents ultimately, we started realizing, oh my gosh, like this is so much bigger than just our own little homes and our own little families. And that we have this opportunity, like we're privileged white women, that it's not just about us, our day. It's not just about raising kids that we love. It's about moving through the world in a way that is supporting more people than just ourselves. That these skills that we're supporting in our kids through respectful discipline is teaching them to go into the world and not just live a privileged life, but also to live for social change as well. Because people who are you've done all the research for us, Jen, basically, that, kids who are shown unconditional love and respect and being, brought into the conversations and be given and supported in all those freedoms that Kelty and I talk about, they have, better mental health. They have stronger relationships. They're
more secure.
They're more secure people. They do better at work. They're more satisfied in their careers. And people who are happier and more secure in themselves are actually the ones that are able to support other people, because they don't have to be constantly looking, oh, are my needs getting met? Oh my gosh, that person said that thing. Oh my gosh, I just messed up this relationship. Oh my gosh, I'm so anxious. That actually allows them to go out there and be thought leaders and innovators and change makers and just really important people, hopefully. And if we can all raise a generation of that, what can be done for our society, which is in real need of a movement like that right now?
Yeah, and just to make that even more explicit, the use of power is something we don't even think about, right? Really, in our homes, but we are. We see it play out in the world every day when a white person has a power over a black person, when the white person is able to call the police and have a certain outcome happen when the police arrive. A male is able to have a certain power over a female, and how does that play out? Where does that come from? And it comes from the decisions that we make today. The way that we interact with our child today is what's shaping our children as they go out into this world and make these decisions about how they interact with other people.
Exactly. I think that's the opportunity and also the responsibility that we're feeling. And when all of the Black Lives Matter stuff kind of started gearing up again, we saw so many parenting resources saying, okay, we need to be raising these anti-racist kids. Let's get out there. Let's buy those diverse books. Let's broaden our play circles when we're able. Let's go to the rallies and have our kids hold the signs and understand what this is all about. And we love all of those things.
Mhm.
We're like, and let's think about all the hundreds of opportunities and experiences we encounter with our children around the actual implicit learning around power and privilege and dynamics, right? What are we telling them about, you know, how to treat another person when we, you know, feel like we need to tell them to go to their room, or when we tell them to stop whining, you know, and we shut down their emotions, or when we tell them to stop arguing, like we've made the decision and we shut down their voices or their will. Like, this is the system of power that they're growing up with. This is the incubator that we have this opportunity to change, so that we're not perpetuating these inherited legacies of control that are really like mainstay in all of these systems in our lives. And I think that just opening our eyes to that idea of in our parenting, in the realm of parenting, can be really intimidating and overwhelming. But I think that all of us are victims of it. And that we have to move past that fragility and say, okay, what am I going to do now about it?
Yeah, I think that it's ultimately can be really empowering too, because we feel like we're all stuck in our homes. We're struggling to feel like we're making a difference in the outer world. We're feeling like our hands are tied in so many ways, and realizing that whenever our kids scream no at us, or have a tantrum, or resist our good intentions, or fling their food in our faces, every single one of those is an opportunity to be making that change outside of the home, building, you know, scaffolding, one conversation, another conversation, right? We get those chances.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an investment for sure. And it's a daily practice. We call it our fail forward approach. And also part of that too, that lastly to mention, I think, is that it's not just this this investment and this sacrifice that we make as parents to just do the right thing. I think it's also raising our kids in this way where we're honoring their inner wisdom and their inner authority through all of these struggles with them, is really helping to raise awareness of our own and nurture our own inner wisdom and authority that has been kind of dampened over the years, where we are looking outside more than inside. We're finally in our mid-30s being like, I deserve a voice. What do I want? What about me? And I think parenting allows us, it's that catalyst that brings up all of these questions and brings that inner child up in us that says, what about me? What about my needs? What about my voice? What about my body? And I think that's the beautiful opportunity of it, that we get to be kind of nurturing and rekindling our own spirits as we're supporting our kids on this journey together. You know, that it's way more collaborative and egalitarian than we ever thought it could be, while also getting teeth brushed at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think we have this feeling like with this growing awareness, the path to those greater ideals will reveal itself. And I think that we've been realizing that it's a path that we forge together with our kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And the idea of learning this stuff for yourself at the same time, I think, is so powerful. And it's definitely something I've been working on for the last year or so, and realizing really for the first time that my body, that my physical experience has something to tell me about what's going on, you know, that I can pay attention to it and it will tell me, am I about to make a decision that isn't right for me? Whereas previously I wouldn't have even noticed, or if I'd noticed, I would just dismiss it. Whereas then I would work for the logical reasons. What are the logical reasons to do it this way? The logical reasons to do it, well, then I'm going to do it that way, aren't I? and just not pay attention to this gut feeling that says, this is the way the decision needs to be. And to figure that out. And am I going to confess how old I am? I'm going to confess to being older than you. But to be figuring that out at this age, I mean, how many decisions would I have made differently if I had known that as a child, if someone had taught me that, or even if someone just hadn't squashed it out of me when I was a child, because I probably had that, as all children do when I was a child.
Yeah. And we get that opportunity now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's, you were describing attunement to yourself, which I think is intuition. And I think that gets confused for instinct. And people are always like, go with your instinct with parenting. And Kelty and I are like, no, your instinct tells you to run from tigers and put kids in timeouts. No, go some levels deeper. That's the practice, is rediscovering that intuition and that inner attunement. And our kids are leading the way with us. They're a few steps ahead of us even, because they're so purely connected automatically. They've been so protected from society's external pressures and expectations. Like, we should be following their lead, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know that's that can be a difficult thing for parents to even conceive of, right? Because it's the idea is, well, we've been around in the world longer. We know what's up. It's our job to raise you the way you should be raised, and to step back from that and say, actually, my kids have as much to teach me as I have to teach them, is a really profound shift for parents, I think.
Yeah, we got to check our privilege, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I think it also takes a lot of pressure off, though. I think we've all had those preconceived notions of the parent we should be and the responsibility we have to XYZ with everything. And it's been such a relief for us when we found RYE at the very beginning, Resources for Infant Educators, you well know. It was just such a load off, realizing, okay, I don't have to be up all in them on them when they're playing. Okay, I don't have to entertain them all the time. Okay, I don't actually have to, force them to get dressed when I want to. All of this, I can just be a little more neutral and see what they have to say and see what they have to give and see what they have to and want to do. It was such a relief. Yeah, while they're learning, we're unlearning so much of this control paradigm. That's the beauty of it, where they're learning, we're unlearning, and we're meeting in the middle.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I wonder if we can spend a few minutes talking about siblings, because I'm guessing you have a perspective on that, and I think you also have a new workbook out, don't you, to help parents?
We do. We set up a guide. It's called the Sibling Survival Guide, and anyone who has siblings will know why the word survival is in the title.
Right next to the word siblings.
Try getting 2 kids to brush their teeth, right, at night. That's a serious situation. We have quite a group too when all 4 of our kids are together, and they're different dynamics. If there are 4 kids, there are 6 different relationship dynamics, right? You would probably do the math better than us. A lot of chemical reactions and relationships and, age splitting and temperament clashing. And it's been a lot. It's been an experiment. And I think that, for so many folks, a lot of our coaching clients, the community we talk to on Instagram lives and stuff, many of them have never spent this much time with their kids. And many siblings in these families have never spent this much time together. And I think that it's talk about thinking about control in a different way. That is when I tend to lose it. The worst is when my kids are fighting with one another. And I think it's one thing to be the person who's helping with toothbrushing or getting dressed, but when kids are hurting one another and constantly bothering one another, it is just another level of torture as a parent. And so it's been something Kelty and I, as very close twin sisters, talk about a lot and think about a lot, and have read a lot about what is a sibling relationship? How can we be supporting that sensitively? How can we be considering the sibling relationship another one of the freedoms that we want to be really sensitively collaborating with our kids? And so that's why we created the guide, and it's broken down into 10 steps to just kind of help us all gain some awareness and move through struggles with our kids a little more adaptively so that they can be building those skills too. But it's a lot. I think most of us, think that our job, talk about jobs as parents in general, but when it comes to our sibling relationships, I think we automatically assume we're judge, we're jury, we're referee, we are EMS first responder,
hall monitor.
we are the manners police. It is a lot of hats to be doing. And on top of that, maybe full-time working, right? Or full-time looking for work. There's so much going on in folks' lives right now. So I think that we flip a few beliefs about, our goals as parents, our role as parents. I don't know how much time we have to talk about that. And then we just go into kind of some ideas about how to approach a struggle so that our kids can learn about themselves and one another rather than what's right or wrong to do. Again, the habit versus the value. Doing that same toothbrushing example with a sibling relationship.
Yeah, we are slightly over the time that we normally go for this, but I think that one of the key ideas that I would like to draw out in this is that you don't see conflict as a bad thing. Can you tell us about that and why that is? Because I think the typical approach is, well, if the kids are fighting, then something's wrong and I'm failing and the family is not doing well and things are not good right now. So how do you see that in a different way?
Yeah, I think that we've been raised to think that conflict in general is negative. And so much of what we've been learning and practicing at upbringing out within sibling relationships and outside of it, just in all of our parenting struggles, is that the hard stuff is the good stuff, because that conflict is an opportunity. Every single conflict is an opportunity to connect and to run the resist approach and to have a conversation, to be building skills, building connection, tuning into the inner wisdom and authority, theirs, ours at the same time. And I think that something that we learned in a lot of our kind of coaching conversations and some Montessori school talks we did was that everyone really believed that the ultimate goal between siblings was harmony. We just want harmony in our home. We want friendship. When we see this fighting, it's not just annoying or stressful or triggering or an impediment to my day, but it puts me in a fear spiral about their relationship and what they're going to be like as people, as friends. Like they need to be, college roommates and giving toasts at each other's weddings and calling each other when I'm gone, right? So we kind of rewrite that goal and talk about how our ultimate goal isn't harmony, but it's connection. And that can only happen when we can lean into these challenges and sort of start rewriting our mental wiring to when we hear that scream, or when we hear that thing break, or when we hear that mom or that whining, instead of thinking this is bad, this shouldn't be happening, this is the worst, either they are failing or I am failing, but to start replacing those automatic negative thoughts with this is valuable, this is good, we're going to get to the other side of this, this is an opportunity for connection for all of us. They're going to learn from this, right? Yeah.
It's a lot of work, though. Luckily, our siblings give us so many opportunities to practice. I mean, think about it. We have 30-something years of neural wiring to be backtracking, and they have so many, they have a very small prefrontal cortex that they're building. And so again, finding a way to meet in the middle where we're unlearning, they're learning. And every time we go through it, when we start seeing the results, when we start seeing our kids using the same words we're using, when we start seeing them setting a boundary lovingly with one another, we start seeing them creatively innovate through an issue, we're like, oh my gosh, this is happening. And it wasn't from creating a victim and an aggressor. It wasn't from telling them again for the 100th time that they shouldn't do that. It wasn't from losing our shit. And I know that that's not what we always want to do, but thinking of what else we can do has really helped us. And so that's what the guide is about, is saying, okay, we know we don't want to do that. What can we be doing instead that's more helpful for all of us?
Even like 10% of the time.
Yeah.
We should actually count the number of like conflict-filled interactions with our kids and just make a little tally and just be like, how many times a day, even once a day, is valuable? If we can get in there, we're feeling a little more primed, a little bit more patient, a little bit more self-regulated, that's an opportunity. I like dive into the room when I'm feeling good. Like, I'm going to get in there and nail it right now. Right? It makes it a little easier the other times when I'm like hiding, plugging my ears, or being like, it's going to stop. I know it's going to.
Our personal capacity definitely plays in a lot.
Sure.
It should. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It was so awesome to meet you. I'm sure our paths would have crossed at some point anyway, but thanks again to Dana for helping us to make the connection, because it was so amazing to chat with you.
Kindred spirit among kindred spirits, for sure.
Yeah. So can you tell listeners where they can find you and all of your work, and like what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, it would be to go to our website at upbringing.co. And then we're also on Instagram at up_bringing. And that's pretty much where you can find everything
we
about
have our resist approach and our freedoms model. You can download there. We have a shop with the sibling guide, and we're mostly around on Instagram.
And we just love talking about the hard stuff. So come to us to talk about the hard stuff. We love it. And we're in it with all of you who are listening. And we know you are too, Jen.
And your stuff is so pretty as well. Your designer is amazing. Whoever helped you to put all that stuff together. I mean, it's just beautiful to look at too. So follow for the eye candy and then stay for the messages.